Well, welcome to the Apologetics.com radio show where we challenge believers to think and thinkers to believe. I'm Harry Edwards, your host for the evening, and tonight we'll be talking about the Super Bowl ad that seems got everybody up in arms. Somehow there's an uproar over this Super Bowl ad.
It's definitely getting attention. We can say that.
It's the He Gets Us. So unless you've been living under a rock, you know that both Christians and non-Christians, conservative, liberal, they're all talking about this. And we want to chime in, too, the Apologetics.com team. We want to chime in. But I'm joined in the studio by my good buddies, Dr. Jacob Daniel and Lenny Esposito. How are you guys doing?
Very well. Yeah, looking forward to this show. It's been really busy a few weeks.
Yes, since the Super Bowl, like the last 10 days or something.
It's been, yeah.
And I know, Lenny, you've got like an upcoming big event. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the Dare to Defend conference is our third year that we're having it in Southern California, Corona. And we have some great speakers coming out from Reasons to Believe, Biola University. Our conference topic is losing our humanity, how a culture unhitched from virtue will lose its faith. And that's kind of what we're focusing on, is how we're becoming more animalistic in our drives and in our beliefs. So we're kind of taking a page from C.S. Lewis and The Abolition of Man, that we feed our beastly appetites, and everything, revolves around things like sex and personal hedonisms, and how we can counter that as a Christian. So yeah, you can go to daretodefend.com or comereason.org and grab tickets. It'll be this Friday and Saturday.
This coming Friday, okay.
Yeah, with your permission, I'll also pitch
there's
a conference coming up
That's right.
by Gateway Seminary on the 16th.
Yeah.
And great line of speakers, including Sam Volbaum, who used to do our radio show.
Yes.
So if you're interested in learning about culture, about politics, about theology and anthropology and sociology and topics related to those, come and attend. It's in Ontario on the 16th. Yeah. The conference is called Foundations, Reasons We Believe.
All right.
The Inland Empire is representing.
There you go. It's burning up with apologetics. Well, today, just FYI, is February 24th. Just to let Josh know, Josh, it's not a pre-recorded session we have today. This is live, and we want to take your calls on the He Gets Us. We want to know your opinions, good and bad. Give us a call and give us your opinion. 888-995-5552. Again, that's 888-995-KKLA. So give us a call. But so before we get into it, though, I just want to remind our listeners that we are supported entirely by your generous donations. If you find our shows valuable and wish to see it continue, please support us by liking and sharing this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media outlets. Actually, it's not Twitter anymore. It's just X. It's just X. You can also help us with our radio costs by going to our website, which is www.apologetics.com, and click the Donate button. Any amount helps, and your partnership will help us remain on the air. So, yeah, especially YouTube. I was talking to Jacob a while ago. I do have this desire to grow our YouTube channel. See, what we're doing right now is an expense YouTube potentially could pay us. So,
and the good thing is that you can also see us doing the show, not just listen to us.
There you go. Because, we have faces made for radio.
That's it.
All right, gentlemen, let's just get into our topic. It's the He Gets Us ad. It was aired during the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago, and it was seen by at least 100 million, according to what I've read. And the creators of the ad spent $10 million each, and it was aired twice, so at least $20 million was spent on this.
And this is just the Super Bowl portion. It's part of a larger campaign. There have been billboards for the past couple of years. In other local sporting events, they are using the He Gets Us campaign more locally, so that you can go to the website and things like that.
And
as
even
well.
on YouTube, they've been promoting
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes, last I checked, it was close to 800,000. So maybe it'll get in the millions pretty soon by the time this is aired. So I want to be fair. I want to be fair.
Well, why don't we explain what the ad is?
Okay, go.
So you have 12 different static images. These are photographs that were taken, but they're real people who are models, put in specific situations where one person is washing the feet of another. And you have, for example, you have younger looking girl, washing the feet of an aging relative or older woman who seems to maybe have a drinking problem, or you have a kind of this burly cop kind of guy washing the feet in the back alley of a black youth. And there's 12 different images like this that are shown. 8 of the 12 are white men or women, middle class, right? Traditional, what Vox calls cisgendered, washing the feet of others. So there's a lady who's washing the feet of a pregnant girl outside a clinic that says family planning, where there are protesters in the background, but she's washing the feet of this girl. So these are the kinds of ads. And there's no commentary on it. It's simply a cover version of INXS's song that's playing behind it until the very end card.
There's a crescendo to it.
Right. Yeah. And it says, Jesus doesn't teach hate. He washed
Well, the
feet.
last image I thought was the crescendo, the climax of it.
The
priest,
the image,
yeah, the priest washing the feet of a gay person or trans person, yeah. So
and then it fades to just text.
Yes.
So it says Jesus didn't teach hate, and then the screen changes. He washed feet.
I wonder if it would be correct to say that the picture itself was the commentary.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to kind of paint the picture that there's no
words used.
There's no narrative other than what the images themselves carry.
Right. In other words, people might have different interpretations to it, and maybe the creators were encouraging that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was very kind of clickbaity in the sense that they were trying to provoke people to say, what is this? Can I find out more? They were trying to instill questions. Matter of fact, one of the persons, there's an article written by a guy who talked with the ad agency who came up with it. And they said, whether we like it, to hear it or not, and survey after survey, even by Christian pollsters, non-Christians believe Christians are against more things than they're for. And their goal then in the ad was to show that Jesus had a far better reputation than his followers. So to remind people that Jesus was a revolutionary, his number one command was to love God, but number 2 was to love your neighbor as yourself. And that's what they were trying to get to in this ad. They were trying to kind of provoke that and get people to call, and then where they could put them in touch with churches or other people who would give them more information.
According to what I read, 20,000 churches apparently were contacted to help with this. So not 20,000 individuals, 20,000 churches.
Yeah, where they could, across the country. So they
could
could reference people to a church in their local area.
So this is huge. I read somewhere that this is part of a $1 billion with a B budget to help spread the gospel. This is $1 billion, so it's huge. The title of our show is He Gets Us, But Do We Get Him? Prerequisites to Pre-Evangelism. All right, so we have some stuff to say about it. There's good and bad. We want to be balanced. But if you want to chime in, the number to call is 888-995-KKLA. Again, that's 888-995-5552. Call us with your comments. You might have some opinions. You might think that some of the reactions out there is just way over the top. We want to hear from you. All right, let's before we critique it too harshly, what are some of the good things you find in this ad?
Well, it does put Jesus front and center in a public space, so that's a kind of a positive in the sense that it reminds me of, like, I always get excited around Christmas time because you actually have songs where if you listen to the lyrics of them, "Come All Ye Faithful" or "Silent Night," these are worship songs
Yes.
in their lyrical content, and to hear them in the grocery store or in secular settings, it's just, there's something a little bit joyful about that. So on one hand, you start to say, wow, hey, we're not invisible in the sense of we can put a message out there as well.
Yeah. And I would just add one thing is that I think it has brought to the fore the importance of cultural apologetics, which we do.
Yes.
That's
right?
That's
and the
right.
discussion around what pre-evangelism is.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing. And I believe it's one of those time. Every year, I think around this time it happens, right? For some reason.
Well, yeah.
Because Super Bowl happens around this time.
Exactly.
And then you're getting ready to get into the Easter season, of course, which is you get the CEO Christians.
Yes.
Who and you get all those special time. It's funny, Time and Life magazines will always run those special Jesus issues, those Jesus, because they know that they sell off
Yeah.
it. So you do get a higher profile and all of these kinds of things.
So I think with regards to, what it is doing is what I love, Os Guinness says, contrast is the mother of clarity. So I'm hoping, being an optimist, that even through this, that we will have more clarity in terms of what we believe about evangelism, pre-evangelism, and even how to engage with the culture. Yeah. Are we in a place to even propose the right and true gospel in the way we want to?
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, so take even the phrase pre-evangelism. A lot of people haven't ever even heard that phrase before. It was evangelism, right? It's go out and be Billy Graham or some facility of that. And this is more missional. Yeah. The way you would go if you were going off to say, the way the 19th century missionaries would travel to China. They would have to understand what culture they're stepping into. They would have to understand what some of those aspects of that culture entail and what they communicate. And they're going to have to live among those people and adopt some of those cultural arts, the milieu of that culture, in order to communicate a gospel clearly and effectively. And so they understand that you have to understand the people you're talking to before you can talk to them.
Yeah. Right. With my background in intercultural studies and missiology, this is something I always talk to students about, who are interested in missions. A thing to think about is that are we doing missions keeping in mind that we have to contextualize the gospel to the culture or culture to the gospel?
Yeah,
that's a clear distinction we must have.
Yes.
And I think much of our discussion tonight is going to be around that very fact, that I think what we are proposing is that we have to bring cultures in submission to what the gospel says.
Sure.
Not the other way around.
Now, we have a caller on hold. Derek, just hang in there. I know we just kind of barely started our introduction here. But tonight's show, we want to definitely talk about the ad itself, what we like and what we don't like, and then closing it off with what I'm calling prerequisites to pre-evangelism, and maybe a little bit of what cultural apologetics is all about, because this is cultural apologetics, and apologetics.com is committed to it. Maybe we can even add a commentary on why we think there's an uproar over this ad. It'd be fun. I haven't read anyone trying to analyze that. I know I have my ideas. I've shared it with you, gentlemen. But I'm going to go ahead and get Derek on the line, knowing that, he might segue into some of our points here. Hi, Derek from Downey. You're on the air with apologetics.com. Do you have a question or comment?
My comment is, well, it's like, it's not hard for me. Let me just let y'all know something really quick. I am still friends with this pastor. He stepped down from the church basically as a pastor, and it kind of hurt me, kind of got butthurt a little bit, but he's still my friend to this day. And that's one thing that he did that he impressed me with, is he not only talked to us about washing the feet of, your disciples, he actually had one of our people up there. And he was washing their feet. And would you, when you really do that, you see a man up there older than you, and he's dealing at the foot of I know he knows them, but still, we have to we gotta stop all this stuff somewhere, we gotta stop the hate, and that's what it boils down to. Is, I don't know, I don't agree or disagree if people want to change themselves, but we really need to check into our mental, stuff and all that. We really do.
Yeah,
and
thanks, Derek. That's definitely helpful, and I hope you listen some more because we want to cover some of the points you just mentioned. Gentlemen, do you have comments for Derek?
Well, I would say that, and I have been involved in foot washing ceremonies as well. And two things are, first of all, it is humbling. It is humbling when you hold another person's foot in your hand. It's humbling for you. It's interesting that Derek had mentioned that his pastor had counseled him as to how we should be washing the feet of our disciples. But there's a distinction there, and that's one of the criticisms some of the folks have lodged against the ad itself is we're not in a position of discipleship as yet. We're still in a position of outreach, initial introductions, so to speak.
Pre-evangelism.
Right. Pre-evangelism. So is foot washing the proper symbol for that? And then lastly, of course, for us as Christians, foot washing immediately brings to mind the upper room. It's a very, very familiar story, but it's not familiar to those who don't even know the names of the apostles, let alone what happened when they decided to have that last meal together. And it could be actually confusing to quite a few people.
Yeah.
Hey, Derek, thanks for your call, and keep listening, please. And we're gonna move on. Thanks again for your call, Derek.
Hey, thank you, guys. You guys have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you. Keep listening.
I think Derek kind of points to something, even with the very symbol of foot washing. It's a tool being used to bring the message of the gospel in one sense. That's the attempt, at least.
That's the hope.
So that's the good question. Even with pre-evangelism, we should be asking by what standard? What kind of tools are we using? Are they even applicable in the context in which we want to bring it? Right? With Paul in Acts 17, we see that he goes about looking at different altars that they have set up, right? To worship their gods. And he doesn't go and appropriates or brings the gospel to say that, we can actually replace the altar of Zeus and replace that with Jesus. No.
Right.
He was appealing to their ignorance about an unknown God, and he presents that who that God is. Right? In our culture, what's happening with foot washing as well is that it can be misinterpreted by people saying that, I have this altar, right, that I understand where I worship. Now, Jesus can somehow fit into that altar.
Yes.
And I think that's where the problem is. So we should be asking, even with regards to tools and symbols that we use in pre-evangelism, by whose standard?
And there's not even a reference to what an altar is, actually.
Yeah.
But I just want to, I know, believe it or not, timing is running fast and moving away from us. We're talking about what we like about it. I want to say a couple things about what I like, and then we'll definitely spend some time talking about what we don't like, what we think is missing the mark here. But I do like the fact that it's an attempt to bridge the gap between the seeker and what they long for, namely that's Jesus, and hopefully they're curious enough about the person of Jesus, and I know the campaign is talking about the Jesus of the Bible and is encouraging them to learn more about this historical Jesus. I like that. And this came in kind of at the last of my list because I wouldn't do this, but they put a little bit of a disclaimer saying that they acknowledge they could be mistaken about how they present this. So I think that's a sign of humility, So they're inviting conversation, a dialogue, which is good. All right, let's set this up for what we think is lacking in this ad, what marks they've missed. And I know we will get into a station break in a couple minutes, but let's start real quick. What don't we like about this ad?
I think we kind of discussed about this. Here we should be seeing the point of evangelism. Even with our pre-evangelism, we need to be understanding the posture we take with regards to who is it that we are preaching the gospel for. Is it for the sake of the people or is it for the sake of Christ? If it is for the sake of people, we'll always be seeker-friendly, and the seeker himself or herself becomes the center of our outreach. And I think that's a big mistake. Whereas if we keep the pure gospel, then Christ becomes the center and what he has done and what he has taught us to accomplish through evangelism. And I think with this ad, there is that confusion. There is no clarity as to where you would land, right? If someone was to watch this as completely unknown to who Jesus is, right? There can be different messages that could be gathered.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be at.
Matter of fact, I remember when I first saw the ad, I was going, okay, who's behind this? And I'm cautious. Is this the Latter-day Saints Church? Is this the Church of Scientology? Both of which have very active media, and they both also give these same kind of amorphous type feelings about who Jesus is, and both of whom, as you go deeper into their systems, you find out that they're desperately wrong. And so I was initially watching before we got the hegetsus.com, address where you can now go look it up. It's like, okay, well, it's generically Christian, but there was a little bit of an unsettling. And part of that was because of the way they juxtaposed the foot washer and the foot washee. They were trading on very clear modern tropes. And those tropes weren't asking the individual. It was almost like the Christian has to humble himself because they've taken a stance on certain issues that our culture sees as divisive. And just because we've taken a stance on those issues that others feel are divisive, we have to somehow now humble ourselves to make sure that they don't misunderstand us. But misunderstanding has been part of Christianity since its inception. Jesus was misunderstood.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing that bothers me in this, is because he said, a student shall not be greater than his master. If they've hated me, they will hate you. It doesn't matter. So that was part of the thing that kind of rubbed me wrong.
And also, this is something they mention on their website. I'm quoting them here. Throughout our shared history, Jesus has represented the ultimate good that humankind is capable of aspiring to. And I think that there's a problem there.
That statement alone, and maybe we can disagree on this, but I'm not sure. What is so bad about that one?
So it seems like there's a human potentiality that can aspire to being good and being, in some sense, being acceptable by Jesus. So this point usually raised that a lot of people, they love Jesus, but they hate Christians. I tend to disagree with that. I think there are many who know Jesus, but they still hate him. And they don't want him in their life. And that's who needs the gospel, right? They are the ones who really need to know who this Jesus is and submit to and commit to him.
Unless it's a built-in longing by God, and it's something that is a holy aspiration. It could be the first step. So I think on its own, I'm okay with it. But we can talk more about that. So anyways, I hear the music, and so it's time for a station break. We'll be right back after a few messages.
Today, let's consider the call to engage in Christian apologetics. Christian apologetics is the reasoned and thoughtful defense of the truth claims of Christianity, providing intellectual, philosophical, and historical justifications for our beliefs. However, as we engage in apologetics, Peter reminds us to do so with gentleness and respect, rooted in love and compassion, seeking to build bridges of understanding rather than creating division. It's not about winning arguments, but about sharing the hope that we have in Christ, an invitation to seekers, skeptics, to explore the evidence, grapple with tough questions, and to encounter the truth of the gospel. Let's be prepared to give a reason for our hope. Let's study, equip ourselves with knowledge, and engage in respectful conversations. May our apologetic endeavors be a means to draw others closer to the truth of Jesus Christ. I'm Minerva Edwards with apologetics.com. For more resources, go to www.apologetics.com.
All right, let's get back to the apologetics.com radio show.
Well, welcome back to the second half hour of the apologetics.com radio show, where we challenge believers to think and thinkers to believe. Tonight we're talking about the Super Bowl ad, He Gets Us, and why a lot of people are just up in arms about it. There's an uproar over it, and we want to understand what that's all about. We talked about some of the good things about the ad. And mind you, we want to be charitable. This is a legitimate Christian effort.
And there's no animus on the part of the makers. They really are trying to reach people. They do really believe that Christianity has been misunderstood in our culture, and they want to present Jesus as one who carries the message that you should love your neighbors as yourself. I don't know that this ad does that clearly.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that one. Yeah. It's a big miss, and so it's unfortunate because they spent multi-millions, and there's another suggested one on YouTube where they go, how about this ad? This should have aired instead, that He Saves Us. Yeah. And I think clearly, to me, it's a much better ad because the message is clearer, right? At the very end, he goes, Jesus doesn't just get us.
Yeah.
He saves us, transforms us, cleanses us, restores, forgives, heals, delivers, redeems, loves us. And then they added that.
Yeah, and they show people who have been transformed.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, the whole ad isn't someone washing the foot. It's a person who's smiling, says, this was a former lesbian activist. Yes. This was a former drug addict. This
former
was
abortionist.
Right, and who's holding a baby now.
Right,
so it's a redeemed life.
It's much clearer.
Yeah. And I think, Lenny, you would remember I made this point early on. Like, even with the task of evangelism, our goal should be one of an individual who has submitted oneself fully for discipleship. Right? That should be the goal as well. And I think we have to remember that, yes, Jesus gets us. And Harry, I mentioned to you, right? He gets us either dead or alive. There is nothing in between, right?
Yeah.
We have to depend on Him. And that happens only through the way of cross. The message of the cross has to be preached as to how He transforms us, but not by our own strength, but submitting to Him fully.
I shared with you guys before the show, John chapter 2, 23 to 25. If the He Gets Us creators just probably looked at that verse, they probably would have rethunk the slogan He Gets Us, because in John 2, chapter 2, that literally there's a phrase there, maybe not exactly He gets us, but Jesus is actually saying to some of His followers, He's distancing Himself because He knows them. He gets us, and some of them are just wicked.
Right.
So He's like, no thank you to you guys.
Well, and this is a second point, and I think it's telling, because while you, especially a lot of Christians who run in Christian circles, have heard Christian criticisms, and some will say, well, you're being overly harsh and things like that. What do the secular left think of the ad?
Yes.
Now, there was an article in Vox, there was another one in MSNBC talking about these ads, and the first big question that they ask is, who exactly is this us? Right? And the authors of the article says, in 8 of the ad's 12 images, the person doing the foot washing is a put-together, cisgender-presenting white person some middle, some working class, washing the feet of their presumed opposite, an oil driller washing the feet of a clean air protester, Gen Zer washing the feet of an aging relative. We're supposed to read this as a straightforward message of opposites uniting despite their differences. But because there's a uniformity in the depiction of those who's doing the act versus who get their feet washed, the overall impression is one of performativity rather than sincerity. And then he quotes an ex-evangelical who said, ex-pastor even, who said the ad could be easily read as a, quote, quick way to put a veneer of acceptance over Christian communities that find it difficult to live out the message of acceptance in real and tangible ways. So basically they're saying that this is a bait and switch. It's a smokescreen. It's we're trying to put a veneer of we like everybody, we'll accept everybody, but once we get you into our church, we're going to make you change.
Yeah.
And his concluding comment was, in other words, Christ may get us, but as long as the campaign emphasizes teaching the unsaved, the unwashed masses about the love of the divine instead of demonstrating true empathy for all, it will always backfire. So that's the left.
I think they get clear distinction between sympathy and empathy.
Yes.
I think with Christ, he sympathizes with our sin. He doesn't empathize by sinning. Right? He becomes sin.
He doesn't sanction it.
He doesn't sanction it. I think there's an expectation. So when people are watching this, what their expectations are, as it is written here, right, in this article, that we desire you to empathize with us, affirm who we are as we are, right, and accept as we are.
Because that's the demand
and
of our
if we don't clarify
today.
that Jesus doesn't do that, it is easily to assume that Jesus would do that. And I think this would be a preaching of a different gospel.
Well, and it's exactly why the phrase of the ad is he gets us, and it puts the emphasis on us. We're still the center of the world. We're still the center in the spotlight. It's not Jesus that's the center. Actually,
and Jesus does teach us to hate certain things.
Sure.
So it's not that he doesn't, I mean, he makes us love all things, right, without setting any boundaries. He sets the boundaries and he demands us to hate certain things, not hate people, as he has not, but he sympathizes with them. And we can sympathize with others, knowing that we were one of these and Christ transformed us. And he did that by his ultimate sacrifice. And that transformative message has to be preached and be included in the gospel, which I think this ad was missing.
Yeah, so you are listening to apologetics.com, and our topic for tonight is the He Gets Us ad that was aired a couple weeks ago during the Super Bowl. And if you want to join in and chime in, you might have some comments or opinions about the ad, He Gets Us. Please give us a call at 888-995-KKLA. Again, that's 888-995-5552. I know when I first viewed the ad, I was actually overseas when all of this hubbub came about. And I go, what's going on? What ad are they talking about? So I viewed it online. And I go, all right, these are nice images, all right. And then somebody even said it might be AI generated, and I go, oh, okay, all right. I see how it could be AI generated because it's very tailored. It's like very specific how they wanted the actors to be placed, and
they've processed the photos in such a way that it has an artificial.
It actually looks okay, and then. They're using this music, and then there's a pause, this dramatic pause, and then a crescendo of the music, and they show the last slide, and I go, all right. I got sick to my stomach a little bit because I kind of knew what they were trying to push, and then the words, right? Jesus didn't teach hate. He washed feet. False dichotomy in my mind right away. I go, false dichotomy, because it was implicitly suggesting that we have to choose between God's love and his holiness, or God's love and his justice. So you always have to watch out for something like that, because it's not an either or. It's not just God's love and justice.
I would say it's the other way around. If you love your child, you don't capitulate to him. You don't allow them to have cake for breakfast, right? The do unto others or love your neighbor as yourself would mean put their best interests at heart, even if those best interests go against what they want to do.
Right.
That's true love. And any parent will tell you that's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes punishing your child, withholding the weekend camping trip because they've done something, it's hard for a parent because you want to have them have that experience and enjoy it, but you know that the punishment is necessary, and you do it even though you don't like it.
Yeah, and in the task of evangelism, we need to understand that we all come to a point where we have to decide sometimes. It's always good to have friends and friendship together, right? You maintain your friendship and you keep your friend. Great. But there comes a time in evangelism, especially when you're offering the truth, that you have to choose between your friendship and your friend. And I hope you choose your friend, because there are eternal consequences to their decisions when it comes to Christ.
Sure. As Coco would say, right, is it vanilla ice cream or antibiotics or whatever, right? I mean, we'd rather have vanilla ice cream, but what we really need is the penicillin, right? Not fun sometimes. But the whole Jesus didn't teach hate, that phrase alone reminded me of something sometimes when people put words in your mouth, and it puts you on the defense right away. Kind of like it's akin to the statement, Lenny, when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah.
Right? It smells of that. Of course, Jesus didn't teach hate. Where do we find that? But why do you even say that?
Why couch it in those terms?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Jesus did do a lot of things. Like Jesus didn't teach us how to crochet. I mean,
But Jesus did say to the Syrian woman, he did say when she asked for, Lord, help me, he goes, it's not good for the children to give their bread to the dogs, right? Some people would take that as a hateful statement.
That's right.
Yeah.
How insensitive, Jesus. Yeah. My goodness.
But she properly understood what he was trying to do, and she said, yeah, but even the crumbs.
Right.
Yeah. And Jesus does that time and again with rich young ruler,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
He reminds him that he really knows him. And the rich young ruler doesn't like it. He can't go and sell everything and follow Jesus. The same kind of calling he had that other disciples had. Come and follow me.
So we have another caller on the line, Chad. Chad has been patiently waiting. Chad, I'm going to bring you in. Chad, welcome to the Apologetics.com radio show. You're on the air. Do you have a question or comment for us?
Yes, this is Ted, T-E-D, City of the Angels. Yes, the comment is, obviously we're washed by the blood of Jesus, not by washing each other's feet. And did Jesus call us to go out into the world and wash everybody's feet? And was he actually showing us that we are to love our brothers and sisters and make that attempt so that they can clean their own lives and not to theoretically go around washing everybody's feet? And yes, he didn't teach hate, but he said, I have this against you. I hate what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And we don't hate as Christians. We hate the actions. And I have mixed emotions about the ad, obviously.
So do we. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so do we, Chad. I'm agreeing with you.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a couple of things here, and you bring out a good point. If you were to exegete the washing of the feet, a couple of things are interesting. First of all, it happens before Jesus' sacrifice. It happens, right, on Holy Thursday, Last Supper, as they're preparing to depart. It happens in the broader context of Jesus talking about the greatest of you will be the least among you. So that teaching is replete throughout the Gospels, that leadership within the church should be steward leadership. It should be servant leadership. It shouldn't be trying to grab the highest rank and the highest order. You should sit at the lowest end of the table, right? He says he has these teachings over and over again. But that's all within the context of within the church, not necessarily going outside to the masses who have yet to become disciples. Mm-hmm. So it's a very stark contrast. Secondly, feet have always been how you proceed in life. You wash the feet so that they're clean, so that you don't count maybe past steps against a person, but the idea is to keep traveling forward in a clean environment, to keep your path clean. And that's where this ad, I think, really goes astray, because it doesn't seem to get that message at all.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Thanks, Chad, for calling and for your support through your listenership. All right. You have a good night.
Amen.
So that was great. If you want to join our conversation and you're still awake, the number to dial is 888-995-5552. Again, 888-995-KKLA. You might have a comment or two, an opinion about the ad that has garnered so much attention, both the left and the right, both conservative and liberal, both Christian, non-Christian. One of the saving features maybe about this ad, we talked about this before, was when New Atheist Dawkins sponsored a billboard on the side of the bus that said something about, that mentioned something about God.
There's probably no God.
There's probably no God.
Therefore,
like relax or something.
Yeah, and live your
life.
happy.
Yeah, do whatever.
Yeah.
And obviously, it seemed like it was a slap against Christianity. Justin Brierley, in his book, said that that ad probably did more to advance Christianity than the initial plan.
Got at least people talking about
Yes.
faith and the existence of God.
And it was so successful that even Christian organizations actually were supporting that billboard. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. So my hope and desire and prayer is that this he gets this ad actually does a 180 degrees and somehow, and we know God can use anything for His glory. So at least people are talking about this now.
You know, when it comes to this is where I might slightly. I know God can redeem all things, but there's a way that God has appointed. I can use a wrench to nail something, but that's not what it is made for. Hammer is made to do that. And I think there's a pattern set with regards to gospel and what the gospel means. And I think there is reverence in presenting that gospel in a certain manner. God can use anything for sure, but I think we need to honor Him with what He has instituted. So we are all for pre-evangelism. I think, right? We appreciate that we need it, but we have to do it in a manner that honors the Lord. So there are 3 points I wanted to actually highlight, because our listeners, if you're interested in knowing what pre-evangelism is, I would say it's built on 3 premises. One is that all truth is God's truth, right? And that needs to be redeemed unto God. Even if those who don't believe have access to those truth in some manner, we need to actually redeem it for the glory of God. Second is that all domain is God's domain. Be it media, be it business, be it whatever it might be. Pre-evangelism is possible in all places because God remains sovereign over all those domains too. And at the end, all that matters is that we recognize that Christ's complete lordship over those domains. And even in our preaching, even in our evangelism or pre-evangelism, that has to be our motive and that has to be our attitude and confidence built upon that Christ is Lord over all things. And that has to be seen up front. It should not be seen as being deceptive.
Secondary.
That has to be the primary thing, because when Christ calls us to Himself, as I think it was Bonhoeffer said, right? He calls us to die.
Yeah.
You know, what you said there, Jacob, reminded me of a famous quote by Abraham Kuyper. I like Abraham Kuyper's thing on this. He says, "There is not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine."
Yeah.
I love that quote.
And you brought up a prior point about history, and this is one of the things where I think that the crafters of the ad are just simply ignorant about Christian history, because there's a assumption that this is somehow new territory for us, and it absolutely isn't. We've been in this before. We've got the writings of the church. Remember what they said is there's this widespread feeling out there that Christians are all about hate. Or Tertullian wrote about this when the Roman Empire was persecuting Christians. And it's interesting. He says, what is there more unfair than to hate a thing of which you know nothing, even though it deserves to be hated? Hatred is only merited when it is known to be merited, but without knowledge, whence is it justice to be vindicated, right? I think it was Chesterton that said it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting, it's that Christianity has been hated and left untried, dismissed and left untried, and that's what we're seeing here. And imagine going back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries, where the Romans were castigating the Christians because all you have to do is worship the emperor. All you have to do is take on the cultural milieu that we want you to take on. Just accept this. You can worship your God as well.
Yeah.
But just accept this one thing about me, about our society. Just acquiesce here. And it was at that point the Christians said, no, we cannot. And they stood indifferent, yet they still grew because of their stance against the evils of the day.
And they went about preaching another king.
Yeah.
For which they were beheaded, right? It's the complete lordship of Christ again over all things.
Yeah. The other thing I don't like about the ad is the Latin phrase non sequitur, right?
Yeah.
Meaning it just does not follow. So whatever images and words they were showing, nothing of what they said follows. I know they're trying to say, all right, you Christians, be more humble, be more loving, but a lot of it is confusing. Like, for instance, what exactly does Jesus get about us? You know, or are sinners needing saving? That's not even mentioned. You know, sin or sinners not mentioned. Not clear. Instead, it might actually condone our sinful lifestyle. And by the way, what does washing feet have to do with our modern sensibilities? Right.
Right. That, again, that's a complete miss. No, people won't understand it. There was a long time where Christians were warned, stop using Christianese. Stop trying to witness to your friend. I'm washed by the blood of the Lamb. I'm soaked in His Word. I'm,
born again.
All that stuff where people have no idea what you're talking about.
Now we just add foot washing to it. Yeah. And you were saying, I know in one show you did, Jacob, what does foot washing have to do with like other cultures? They might not understand that. Now, maybe in the first century in Palestine they would, but nowadays, what's that all about?
And maybe some people in India, it is still practiced around election times. Politicians, they would come, upper caste, right? They would let their feet being washed by lower caste, or they would do the other way in rare cases.
Okay, we have another caller, and this might be our last one. Gregory from Wilmington. We're going to bring you in. Hello, Gregory. You are on the air with apologetics.com. Do you have a question or comment for us?
Yeah, well, question or comment in the sense of your washing of the feet. You know, how many times did Jesus explain washing of the feet? I think, you have one that kind of ends like those that forgive little, love little. Then you got the idea of Jesus saying, well, you don't understand what's happening to you kind of to Peter until later. So, if you look at washing of the feet when you're entering a home, so what does that have to do with Jesus and the kingdom of God when you wash somebody's feet? What are you actually confidently, lovingly inviting these people to simply, even in a perplexed consideration, understand what it means to put your hands under somebody's feet, much less put your hair and your tears on them?
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. You have a wonderful, blessed night. I'm at work, so.
Yeah, thanks, Gregory, for your call. Good stuff there.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Gregory's right? I mean, there's a disconnect.
Yeah, and again, because it only happens within the context of teaching leaders to be humble to their followers.
Right.
And we need to also emphasize that all these critique among Christians is not because we hate each other.
Right.
It's because iron sharpens iron, and we are here to help our brothers that they would help us if we are in a place where we are not presenting the gospel properly. And likewise, I think people who are stepping in and commenting on this and critiquing the ad and bringing their concerns, it's for them to actually even become better. I hope they come up with a better advertisement
for next year. That's the hope and prayer. That's good. Yeah, we're not here because we have this passionate dislike or distaste for the ad and what the group is doing. No, they're our brothers. We love them. We're just trying to tweak it a little bit better because we at apologetics.com, we've been doing this for a long time. We want to see ourselves as experts in this, on cultural apologetics. And may I say that maybe part of the uproar surrounding this is because a lot of folks are now just getting introduced for the first time to cultural apologetics, and they're not quite sure where to put that. They're not quite sure. They don't have a framework to which they can place this in their way of thinking. The other thing, too, is I think you mentioned this before. It's unfortunate, but the politics kind of overshadows the message. It was a little too strong. It was too obvious. And like that article you're reading, Lenny, they're showing polar opposites,
and they're very 2024 caricatures of what polar opposites are.
Right.
They're not. It's not. It wasn't a person handing from a Christian food pantry to an individual who's in need. It's not starting an African school. Things that Christians have traditionally done in ministry and have really made differences, providing vaccines to underreached areas of the world, things like that. This is what Christianity started doing. And Christianity's built the first hospitals. Christianity started the first orphanages, scooping the children who were abandoned by the Romans and the Greeks. They would scoop up those kids, even if those kids were maimed, and they would take them into their house and share what limited food they had, even with these children who would never be productive farmhands. This is the kind of thing that Christianity did that showed the value of individuals, and those are the pieces that I think would have been much more powerful
Also, may I add this, in our pre-evangelism efforts, may I offer a couple suggestions. One is the interplay between message and method. I know in my mind that's easy to remember, message and method. We can tweak however way we present the message, and in this case, they were culturally sensitive to the times by making, a Super Bowl ad. My goodness, that's like the best way to communicate anything today is an ad during the Super Bowl, right? Because millions see it. So that's good. Hooray for that effort. But the message cannot be compromised. You got to work at it. You got to make sure you are biblical about it and right on that. So you can tweak the method, whatever, but the message needs to remain faithful. The other thing I was going to say, just make good connections between need and resource. What I mean by that is we have longings, we have needs. We know that we're not perfect creatures. And so because we are contingent, we have needs and we long for those resources, I'm sure. That's what I'm trying to say. We long for these resources, and we find that in the gospel. We find that in the person of Jesus. And Jesus is our supreme example, where he presents himself to the hungry as the bread of life, to the thirsty, I am the living water, right? There's that bridge. So how can we do that to the seeker? How can we be like that to the seeker?
Yeah. And he says, if you do not eat my bread and drink my blood, you shall have no part in me.
Exactly.
It's very divisive at that point.
Okay, I hear the music loud and clear. So you've been listening to apologetics.com radio, where we challenge believers to think and thinkers to believe. Our hope is that you've learned some aspect about the Christian worldview that strengthens your faith and make you want to learn more. So special thanks to my panel this evening, Jacob and Lenny, and to our behind-the-scenes sound engineer back there. Special thank you to you, our listeners. Until next time, good night.